An angle is an amount of turning, a measure of rotation, and may be described as positive or negative depending on the direction of rotation. An angle is more formally defined as the ratio of a circular arc length compared to its radius, and this definition will be significant for those who go on to study higher levels of mathematics. The concept of an angle seems to have been developed by the Greeks first, but units for measuring angles seem to be limited to descriptions involving right angles. For example, they discovered that the 3 angles in a triangle were equivalent to 2 right angles. So how was the degree developed? Where did it come from? And why was it decided that 360 of these should equal a full revolution? Evidence suggests that degrees came from Mesopotamia more than 3,000 years ago. The Sumerians had a base 60 number system, and this was passed on to the Babylonians. One line of thought claims that base 60 actually came about from 5 multiples of the number 12, which is the number of joints on 4 fingers of one hand, leaving the thumb free to count by pointing to each joint on each finger as you do so. 5 repeated hand counts gave 60, and this was used as the base for counting large numbers. So base 12 counting, known as duodecimal, probably led to base 60. Base 12 and 60 have the advantage of having many factors besides one in themselves, which is useful for fractional calculations. And this might explain the fascination with factors and multiples of 12 and 60 and why they have historically been used in units of measuring, many of which are still commonplace today. An hour is 60 minutes, 1 minute has 60 seconds, 1 day has 24 hours, which is 2 lots of 12. And hence we have 12-hour analog clocks, split into 60 markers to show the 60 minutes with the large hand and 60 seconds with the extra thin hand, of course called the second hand. And the use of the number 12 doesn't stop there. 1 year has 12 months, although it wasn't always so. And of course there are 12 signs of the zodiac. A foot has 12 inches. And we often count in groups of 12, called a dozen. Apparently this started because the old British shilling was made up of 12 pennies, called pence, so retailers could split a dozen eggs and calculate the price easily. Remember, there were no calculators, and being able to mentally calculate fractional quantities was very useful. That's still not all. A gross means 12 dozen. A great or grand gross is 12 of these, and is also called a cubic dozen. Just how far did this fascination with the number 12 go? Well, there are usually 12 people on a jury, and there were even 12 apostles. But I think we're in the realm of coincidence now. Let's get back on track. The claim that it was the Babylonians who split a revolution into 360 degrees is disputed. However, they did apparently have a calendar of 360 days consisting of 12 months, each with 30 days. Whether coincidental or deliberate, the fact that 360 is 6 lots of 60 means that 360 degrees also has all these factors of 12 and 60, and more. The concept of 360 parts to a revolution, though, does appear to originate from the ancient Babylonian study of astronomy, where they noticed that the stars seem to advance in a circular arc in the sky by approximately 1/360th of a full circle each day. This likely led to their 360-day calendar, but they did not formally define this as a measure of an amount of turning. In other words, there's no evidence to suggest they applied this to other angular measures, only to the movement of the stars in their ecliptic path, and to the number of days they thought made up 1 year. It was in the 2nd century before the Common Era that the Greek astronomer Hipparchus of Rhodes began applying geometry to Babylonian astronomy. Looking for a method to measure angles, he followed the Babylonian division of the ecliptic into 360 parts, so he divided the circle the same way. So, although angle measurement comes from the ancient Greeks, the 360 degrees originates from the Babylonian or Sumerian astronomy. The high factorability of 60 not only led to the division of hours into 60 minutes and then minutes into 60 seconds, but is probably why exactly the same divisions were chosen for smaller angular measurements. That's right, 1 hour equals 60 minutes. Well, so does 1 degree. And 1 minute equals 60 seconds of time, but also in angular measurement. An interesting side note, when the metric system was developed during the French Revolution, attempts were also made to metricize time and angular measurements, and a new French Republican calendar was introduced in late 1793, consisting of 12 months of 30 days, split into 3 10-day weeks. The new months were named after nature and seasons, but the year started on our September 22nd. 5 extra complementary days were added to the end of the year to keep up with the solar year. This calendar was almost an exact copy of the ancient Egyptian calendar, other than the names and the starting date when compared to ours. In metric or decimal time, using 10 hours per day, each hour was split into 100 minutes and each minute into 100 seconds, giving us 100,000 seconds per day instead of the 86,400 seconds that we have in our current base 60. This actually made time conversions very easy, as shown in this clock, where 7 hours 50 minutes and 80 seconds into the day is identical to 7.5080 hours. It's a shame it didn't take, because we would all be used to it and enjoying the benefits of decimal formatting, although it would have made more sense to use the newly introduced prefixes deci, centi and milli with hours instead of reusing minutes and seconds and causing more confusion. Thanks to Napoleon, it was abandoned in early 1805, but made a very brief reappearance in Paris, literally for just a few weeks in 1781. The metric units for angles, however, were split slightly differently. It was a right angle that was divided into 100 parts, rather than a full revolution, and thus there are 400 of them in a full turn. These units are known as gradians, or grads for short, and are still used by some military organisations, particularly in France where they were invented. They are also included on most calculators. As we know, the general population not only returned to base 60 for time, but also for angular measure as well. That concludes our brief look at the history which led up to 360 degrees in a revolution and to splitting these degrees into minutes and seconds. In part B of this subtopic series, we will see how to use degrees, minutes and seconds on a calculator.